can be called the D trilogy came to a close with D2 for the Dreamcast. And much like the first D and its Sega Saturn pseudo-sequel Enemy Zero, D2 is a bit of a watershed game. Not exactly perfect, it's a very unique game whose crazy ideas work more than they don't. It is a stunningly beautiful game by Dreamcast standards, an excellent spin on typical survival horror conventions, and features first-rate voice work, but is marred by an awkwardly paced, sometimes directionless story that above all far overstays its welcome. Everything else is creative and engaging, but that story? And you thought Kojima was long-winded. D2 once again showcases that Kenji Eno was and is truly one of the great creative minds in video games, but it is somehow both the most and least accessible entry in the trilogy. It is the same level of flawed genius we expect from Mr. Eno, but while previous entries had their flaws, those were design choices, necessary evils. The narrative of D2 feels like a genuine misstep. A must-have for horror and Dreamcast enthusiasts, but at times is difficult to recommend to all gamers. As I mentioned in my review of D, D2 started life as the flagship title for Panasonic's M2, which was to be the successor to its marginally successful 3DO. This version of D2 was to be a direct sequel to D, though instead involving Laura Harris's son. It was allegedly 50% finished when Panasonic canceled plans to release its next system. Luckily, Warp Games had established a solid relationship with Sega, who at the time was developing the next system, the Dreamcast. Kenji Eno decided to completely scrap the previous game and start from scratch with Sega's new system. So, along with Shenmue and Sonic Adventure, D2 was among the first games developed for the Dreamcast. However, it wasn't released until late August of 2000, almost 1 year after the system had been released. Laura Parton, no, not Laura Harris or Lewis, Parton, is traveling on a plane fighting to stay awake. Laura goofs around with the kid sitting in the seat in front of her and strikes up a conversation with the man across from her aisle, when the plane is suddenly taken over by terrorists, who seem to be working for a mysterious old man performing what looks like a seance. Oh, and if you watch closely, the in-flight movie is actually footage from the scrapped version of D2. Things go from bad to worse when a meteor strikes the plane, sending it crashing down into a desolate Canadian mountain. Laura wakes up in a cabin, miraculously unharmed, makeup still intact, thanks to the help of, hey, it's Kimberly from Enemy Zero! She starts to explain what's happened since the plane crash when a man bursts in and starts violently sprouting plant-like tentacles that attack Kimberly and... Yep, stay classy, Japan. But our heroines are saved by, hey, it's Parker! And he's kicking some ass instead of dying off in the opening cinema like he did in Enemy Zero. This is where we find out that Kimberly is a pretty conflicted woman, and the game and its story officially begin. It's a rather long opening that kicks off a promising story, both deep and fascinating, that unfortunately ends up being the game's most glaring flaw. Here's how I imagined it went down. Kenji Eno released D in Enemy Zero and was fittingly applauded by critics for his storytelling abilities. Then a little game called Metal Gear Solid came out, and Mr. Eno said, hey, I can do that too! Ditching a more minimalist structure like boo, haunted castle, or boo, space aliens, D2 is much more than just a plane crash and green plant-like aliens. It attempts to make broad statements about the errors of mankind and the flaws of human nature, illustrate the effects of substance abuse, demonstrate the stages and struggles of an existential crisis, and ask sobering questions about the concepts of identity and destiny. The story is very deep, going places philosophically few games have ever gone before. In typical Kenji Eno style, he has taken the road less traveled. I have no doubt that hidden in this mess of a story is a profound message, but I couldn't be bothered to search for one. The story lacks cohesion and at times can't decide which message it's trying to enlighten you with. It's simply too much. Though when discussing a story of this depth and ambition, there's no accounting for taste, so it's fair to argue these claims. But even if you did enjoy the story, you gotta admit, it could have been trimmed way down. I mean, a bad story I can forgive, but when it starts to overstay its welcome, it hurts the game. Kojima makes this shit look easy. As far as the problems with the narrative, the biggest culprit is our heroine, Laura. She is once again a silent protagonist, and though that worked fine in D and Enemy Zero, it's no longer working here. The story has just far too much shit going on this time, and if Laura were able to talk to the other people, it would have helped things immeasurably.
Hey, you're awake. What happened to you? I don't know. I can't remember anything. Hi, my name is Laura. Oh, hi, Laura. I'm Kimberly. I need your help to get the fuck out of here. No problem. Thanks for giving me shelter. I'm with you, friend. Let's get the fuck out of here. Oh, shit. Ah! Instead, we have long sequences where characters rattle on and on and on. And these sequences aren't engaging because usually, Laura's just sitting there listening. She hardly contributes to anything. And as far as story progression goes, she's like a stowaway. She might as well be Wilson. Actually, Laura does finally break her silence, but it's literally 4 words. I think during these moments I was supposed to be moved and shocked. I was neither. This mute lead character approach worked especially well in Enemy Zero because Laura was actively pushing the story forward, contributing to the plot. Here, people talk, she listens, things happen, and they say, "What do you say, Laura? Can you help?" These lengthy dialogue scenes try really hard to get me to care about what's happening, and it did for a while, but by the time the credits started to roll, I had checked out hours ago. If they had caved and finally given Laura a voice, maybe it would have sped things along. To be fair, the amount of dialogue sequences never changed through the 4 discs, but things start to pick up after disc 1. The first disc is definitely the most boring. Things start to get really interesting on disc 2, but by the time disc 3 rolls around, the story has taken an odd turn and starts getting all philosophical. We spend much more time with characters venting introspectively, and crazy shit like the plane crash and the plant creatures aren't really discussed anymore. Not to mention, they keep introducing new characters, providing backstory that's seldom important, only to kill them off sometimes later that very cutscene. Things like the plane crash and the plant creatures are explained, but not in as much detail as, say, Kimberly's past. In fact, I think by the end of the game, I knew most not about Laura, Parker, the green monsters, the plane crash, but about Kimberly's tragic upbringing and life story. Yeah, you had a rough childhood, but there's plant aliens all over this mountain. Is this really the best time to be having an existential crisis? Why don't you shut up, grab a gun, and help me get us the fuck out of here? Enemy Zero and D were amazing pieces of storytelling, but unfortunately, Mr. Eno dropped the ball on this one.
It's really upsetting that the story is so bad because nearly everything else is great. This may surprise you to hear this, but the dialogue scenes are actually well written and very well voiced. Yeah, characters ramble on, but the actual dialogue ain't bad. And more importantly, that voice work is top notch. Though the lip sync is atrocious, this ain't Shenmue.
Must be lost along with the other passengers from the crash.
Shitty lip sync was the norm back then, so it's forgiven. And though the content of the story is more weird than scary, I'd still classify D2 as survival horror. But then again, this is Warp Games, so of course D2 has its own approach to survival horror.
For people who enjoyed Resident Evil 4 but can't stand the controls of older Resident Evil games, might squirm in their seats to discover that Laura controls in that familiar tank style, where up always moves you forward and left and right always rotates you. Now, I for one have never had a problem with the tank controls, but agree they shouldn't have stayed a staple of the genre for as long as they did. D2 fixes this mistake by having combat take place in the first person. This not only brings a really cool RPG mechanic to the game, it saves the game from horrible combat spoiled by slow movement and awkward camera angles. It also makes the boss battles a hell of a lot more interesting. There's even aspects of QuickTime events. You could argue that Resident Evil 4 was very much inspired by D2. Then again, D2 was probably inspired by Parasite Eve. This does give the game random battle syndrome, but moments are typically brief and fun. It works more than it doesn't. But this is survival horror, and if you're gonna survive, you'll need an ample amount of ammo and health supplies. But since combat is all random battles, things are balanced with weapons that have both limited and unlimited ammo. You start the game with an Uzi that you just find in a cupboard, and though it's the weakest weapon, it has unlimited ammo. Shotguns and handguns have limited ammo, but pack more firepower and accuracy that help when you're in a pinch or battling a tough boss. You eventually get a semi-automatic rifle that replaces the Uzi, though it's still nothing on that shotgun. Ammo is scattered all over the game, but this makes these standard on-rails indoor sequences finally engaging. If you spot a box of ammo or some first aid spray, hold down the Y button, look at it, and you'll automatically pick it up and add it to your inventory. Keep a sharp eye, because there's stuff hidden everywhere. And while you're at it, check out the detail of the world around you. It's a damn pretty game.
So you have a few guns with unlimited ammo, but you have to depend on first aid sprays to keep your health up? Nah, there's another way to replenish your health. Hunting.
Your first weapon is actually a hunting rifle, though you never use it in battle. Instead, as you explore the mountain, you'll come across game to kill, like caribou and hare. Successfully shoot one and you'll be rewarded with some meat. Now, meat doesn't replenish nearly as much health as first aid sprays, but I don't think there's any limit to the amount of game you can carry. This hunting mechanic not only keeps things balanced in the presence of random battles, it's actually a clever way to make you appreciate how beautiful this game is. Play this game for a while and you'll start squinting at any black dot just over the horizon.
Wait a minute, is that a bunny? Oh, it's just a fence post sticking out of the snow. I wanted to kill a bunny.
Yeah, this game will totally bring out the cold-hearted predator in you. But hunting isn't as easy as you'd think. This isn't Halo. Your rifle controls pretty realistically, especially when you're fully zoomed in. There's a lot of game to score out there, but you gotta earn it. But don't worry, you got unlimited ammo with this thing too. Though I do love this piece of video game logic.
You can put the game you caught in this portable cooker. It automatically cleans and cooks the meat.
Sure it does.
So you can eat whenever you're hungry. It's pretty good.
Wait a minute, how exactly is something that complicated portable? Where is Laura keeping that thing? Oh well. I've said for a Dreamcast game, D2 was absolutely beautiful, but its crowning achievement is the Canadian mountain. Snowfalls and tree branches and lights sway and bob in the wind. Wild animals populate the mountain and frolic and flee when they hear the sound of footsteps or the sound of a rifle. Cabins and fences are buried in snow and caked with ice, emphasizing the presence and power of nature. As the game progresses, so does the weather, from daytime, sunset, and nightfall. Warp did an exceptional job creating a snow-covered mountain that feels isolated and unforgiving. This mountain is alive and real.
It's really a shame there wasn't like a body temperature mechanic. That's how realistic it feels. I was actually worried if Laura was wearing enough clothes to stay warm.
And I've already mentioned the indoor buildings and cabins. After you've collected your ammo and first aid spray, check out how meticulously decorated they are. The interior of the plane wreckage is especially impressive too. However, why is this poor deceased woman missing her pants? Stay classy, Japan. There's one sequence where you use a flashlight in a mine shaft and the lighting effects are great. The characters and enemies are all amazingly detailed, but again, the creatures are more weird looking than scary. D2 doesn't just look good, but at times feels real.
I played my share of survival horror games, so I know the importance of being conservative with your ammo and health supplies. So by the time I got to the end boss of D2, I had so much firepower and first aid sprays, he didn't stand a chance. And I was ready to declare this a disappointment. And then it occurred to me, I've had the exact same problem with Silent Hill and Resident Evil.
In fact, most every survival horror game I played had this problem. The final boss was a total pushover because I'd spent the whole game rationing my health items and ammo. But it must be mentioned that final push to the last boss of D2 was far and away the toughest struggle of the game, sometimes bordering on cheap. Item management is also something missing, but it's something I can't hold against D2 because of the random battles. It's a necessary evil I can overlook, and besides, this RPG approach to survival horror is really cool. And with that, we've completed the D trilogy, so let's recap things. D was great, but short. Enemy Zero was also great, but really hard. D2 was unique, beautiful, and a ton of fun, but gah, that story. Do you see a pattern? But Warp and Kenji Eno made the games they wanted to make, and the games they wanted to make were always unconventional. The D trilogy was not made with everyone in mind. And even though each of these games had their flaws, they're still unlike anything else out there. Though I'll concede that D2 felt to me that it was long-winded and desperately grasping for a cohesive message, there's no accounting for taste. Some people thought No Country for Old Men was boring. I thought it was brilliant. On the other hand, I think 2001 is awful, while others see it as a perfect piece of cinema. Maybe you'll enjoy the story to D2 more than I did, especially now that you know what to expect. Regardless, my point is this. The D trilogy may be an imperfect one, but it is still one that demands your attention. They will challenge your perception of storytelling, and they will challenge your perception of how a video game ought to be structured. And in the end, this is the trilogy's greatest achievement.
Well, I'm done with the D trilogy, but I'm not done with Halloween. Up next, I got a Halloween game for the ages. See you soon. Cheers.